the box, the God, and the trade. Need a little bit more? Okay, let's try. Okay, how's that? Much better? This is more for the cryptic crossword people. That's not me. I don't understand cryptic crosswords. So that one on the side there with the lady, they call that a meme. You'll see those on Facebooks, and people stick words on them. You'll see one of those. You'll see it come back a little bit later. And the other one's a bit harder, but it's quite cryptic. But those moviegoers who remember older movies will be all over that one. But I can give you a last clue. Last time I spoke here, I talked about an Old Testament story, a fairly unusual Old Testament story, Abraham and the covenant and the parting, God going through the pieces of meat, through the animal. Someone remembers that? I heard a yep. Awesome. I'm excited. So let's move on to, oh, how did that get there? Oh, there's my bike. I thought, okay, you know the topic now. We're talking about idols and idolatry. That's my bike on the right. It's actually the brand of my bike is an idol. Every time I'm riding, right in front of me is idol. I can't get away with it. So I thought, well, here's a way to let you know what we're talking about. So we are talking about idols and idolatry, and 95% of you have switched off. You have, haven't you? You go, right, I don't worship idols. Don't bow down to anything at my place. Well, that's not the type of idols that we're necessarily going to be talking about. So I need that 95% of you to switch back on. So let's go. The first of our 3 points was the box, the God, and the trade. That's what we're talking. So let's talk about the box. Our first box is the Ark of the Covenant. It's a chest. We called it an ark because that's Latin for chest or box. Okay, I just thought I'd throw that in there to show off. But this is from Raiders of the Lost Ark, that movie that I referred to in that cryptic first picture. So we need to just understand a little bit about the box. I'm not going to focus very much on this. You can see it's rectangular. It's 4 foot by 2.5 foot by 2.5 foot. Sorry, Steven Spielberg, you got that wrong. That's too big. It's gold. There's poles to carry it. Inside, the 10 Commandments, manna, and the budding staff of Aaron. Good. Love it. People are on it. And on the top, we have the mercy seat and the cherubim over the top of that. So this was in, and Chris talked about the tabernacle before. In the Holy of Holies of the tabernacle, blood was put on the mercy seat. God's glory would come down. Moses would talk to God. God's presence was there. In between those two, in the mercy seat. So that's the Ark of the Covenant. That's our box. That's it for the first point. Looking good, hey. Could be a short sermon. Sorry. Nah, not that quick. The next part, the God story, relates fully to the Ark of the Covenant. And if you liked Raiders of the Lost Ark, if you thought there was a lot of action in that movie, well, I tell you what, it's got nothing on this Old Testament story that we're going to have a look at now. The story is about the Israelites are going out. Actually, they were in a pretty bad spot. The sons of Eli were corrupt, totally corrupt. Israel was corrupt. Samuel's just about on the up and up. He's about to become a shining light, but it's not Samuel's time yet. So Israel pop into war against the Philistines. 3,000 people die. Not a good start, okay? So they think, what should we do? Hang on. The Ark of the Covenant. When we had that, we could cross the Jordan to Jericho. When we had the Ark of the Covenant, we could march around Jericho, and what happened? Walls came down because we had that, right? Ark of the Covenant, it's there. God met with Moses, spoke to us. It's a good thing. So they sent Eli's sons, Phineas and, I've forgotten the other, Hophni, yeah, that guy, sent the two of them to go find the Ark of the Covenant and bring it back, because if we go into war with the Ark, we'll be right. So, when they brought the Ark of the Covenant into the Israelite camp, there was such a din and a noise and rejoicing because they had it, right? They had the Ark, they've got God with them. The Philistines, it was so noisy, the Philistines heard it and started quivering. They were worried because they go, oh no, we know what that God of Israel did when they came out of Egypt. It didn't go well for the Egyptians. That might happen to us. So they think, we're really going to have to fight hard tomorrow because they've got an ark. Something's happened. Anyway, got the ark. Israelites go into battle against the Philistines and they lost big time. 30,000 dead. The two sons of Eli, I'm not going to say, I can never remember their names. They both died, as God said they would, on that day. The Ark of the Covenant is stolen by the Philistines. A messenger zooms back, tells Eli, he falls off his seat and breaks his neck. You're probably wondering, Richard, is this a good story? How is this helping us and God? But bear with me, because we're only a little bit into our small g, the Ark, the God and the trade story. We haven't got to the small g God yet. So the Philistines take the Ark, and this is the good bit. They take the Ark of the Covenant into the temple. They're touching the Ark, by the way. What happens if you touch the Ark? You die. They're not dead. They put it in the temple of Dagon, right? Now this Dagon temple, this god, the temple, the idol of Dagon is a man, right? A big man. He's the god of fertility. I didn't realise Dagon's a big deal, right? This god in Mesopotamia, he's a big deal. They call him the father of Baal, actually. And we know what Baal, the Baal gods, and how Israel really go down a rabbit hole worshipping Baal. Anyway, so they put it in the temple for Dagon, who, father of Baal, and set him up there, and then they go in the next morning to worship Dagon, right? And what's happened? Here's Dagon down, bowing before the Ark of the Covenant. And they go, wish we had security cameras. Because some dirty, rotten little teenagers have come in, got our God, and laid him down in front of the Ark of the Covenant. Those little rotters, I'll get them. So we take our God, small g God, put him back up, and then everything should be right. Remember, this is like, this God, I told you Dagon was big God, right? He actually was the God, if you think back to Samson, Samson very strong, not so strong when his head's shaved off and his eyes are gouged out, and they're all mocking him. They take Samson into the temple, and 3,000 people are there to worship and celebrate. Guess who? Dagon. And then Samson says, one more time, Lord. One more time, give me strength. And he pulls down the pillars, the temple come down, 3,000 people, and Dagon, gone. Was it about Samson getting the power, or was it about Dagon being overpowered by a more powerful God? That's what it was about. So Dagon lost then. Dagon was the father of Baals, remember? Elijah, Mount Carmel, what happens there? All the Baals lose. God won, Dagon lost again. In this case, they come in the next morning, Dagon had been down, teenagers, remember? Put him back up, and what's happened when they come in the next morning? Here's Dagon, face down, in front of the Ark of the Covenant, minus his hands and his head. His hands and his head are at the entrance to the temple of Dagon. After that, the priests of Dagon get so nervous about Dagon, they call him the toppling god. And they don't want to stand near him because they think he's going to fall on them. Okay, so point of the story here, we go on to the next one. In Ashdod, the Philistines, with their great god, small g, Dagon, go, the hand of Israel is hard against us and our god Dagon. The ark must not remain with us. Hang on. We're talking about a box. Gold, fancy, but it's a box. But that box was with all the Israelites, and they went into battle, and they lost. So where was the power in that box? Wasn't very effective, was it? But hang on, now we're in the temple of Dagon, no Israelite army. One Ark of the Covenant has already overthrown their God. Twice. I like it. And not only that, inflicted the town with tumours, and so heaps of people are dying. And they go, this isn't good. This isn't good. The ark mustn't stay with us. Okay, we'll send it on to the next Philistine town. So you reckon you want to be the next Philistine town? So they get it, and everybody starts dying with tumours. So remember, how many Israelites are in the country of Philistine fighting for God at the moment? None. What's there? The Ark of the Covenant. God's presence was there. And so, okay, that next town go, we don't want this here. People are dying. Let's put it on to the next town. So they send the Ark of the Covenant onto a third Philistine town, Ekron. So the Ekronites aren't stupid. They go, this Ark of the Covenant comes in here. We're all going to die. Let's send it back to Israel. And there's a whole story around how they do that. We don't have time for it today. But single-handedly, God, not the box, God's presence in the box has killed thousands of Philistines, toppled and beaten their God, because the head coming off shows he's more smarter, wiser. The hands coming off shows he's more powerful to the Philistines. And then he's got it so that the Philistines send the box back to Israel. All to God's doing. Let's unpack a little bit about that. What we see is how all-powerful God is. Dagon bows down twice before his presence, as I said, loses his head and his hands. The Philistines thought their God, small g God, was stronger than Yahweh. They were wrong. We talked about Samson, we talked about Elijah. Idols, gods seem to win in the short term. Israelites had 34,000 people killed. Okay, the Israelites pretty happy with their god Dagon at that stage. Not when they had the spoils from their victory, though. It didn't go so well. The Israelites had treated the ark a bit like a talisman, a good luck charm, an idol. God had been there before, God will be there again. But God's presence, God chooses where he will be present. What I'm getting at is it's not a magic trick. You can't assume that because what you did before, God was in, right? God will be in it when you do it again. The Israelites made that mistake. The wooden box, the Ark of the Covenant, was impotent when the Israelites had it. It hadn't been before, but God knew how corrupt they were. He knew their hearts. Impotent with them, and yet it has laid waste to the Philistines because God has chosen to be present in it again. Lastly, God cannot be put in a box. I just wanted to say that actually because it was just too good a pun, I had to say. God can't be put in a box. As I said, altar calls might be a good thing for a while, and you might have lots of people come to God through altar calls, but don't keep doing altar calls if God isn't present in them. Just one example. We can't believe that because God was in it there, he will continue to do it. God can't be put in a box, seriously. He is not a tame God. Okay, let's move on. What are idols? Not that kind of idol, okay? It was just opportune that Australian Idol happened to come back on TV at the moment. I'll just catch up. And not that kind of idol. Though, if we go back, that can be an idol, can't it? That can be an idol, can't it? Sadly, yes. That's about as good as mine gets. Sorry. Okay, so what does God say about idols? If we go to the 10 Commandments, the first 20% are all about idols. God says, "You shall have no other gods but me." Pretty clear. You shall not make for yourself an image. What happened 12... Okay, this is Exodus 20. 12 chapters later, what did they make? Golden calf. Only 12 chapters. Can't believe it. That's all they lasted. And they made a golden calf. We can fast forward through to most of the books of the Old Testament, and we'll find lots of examples of idolatry. So what we've been talking about is idols of wood, gold, silver, stone, icons, things that we sacrifice to or bow down to. Okay? I'm probably back on the 95% of you who probably don't do that. Okay? What about in Ezekiel? He says, "Son of man, these leaders have set up idols in their heart." Hang on. That's not a wood, silver, golden, stone idol that they're bowing down to. It's an idol of the heart. Tell them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. "The people of Israel have set up idols in their hearts and fallen into sin. So I, the Lord, will give them the kind of answer their great idolatry deserves." So hang on, let's look at that. They've let their hearts be led astray, and God says there's going to be punishment. I, the Lord, will give them the kind of answer that their great idolatry deserves. And then he says something quite amazing. "I will do this to capture the minds and the hearts of all my people who've turned from me to worship their detestable idols." God doesn't give up on them. He's going to do something about capturing them. And we're really going to look into that very soon. We'll look into that a little bit more. But I mentioned to you about a meme. So this is a way of summarising what we just were told in Ezekiel 14. Captures the minds and hearts of my people who turn from me to worship. So I stuck a couple of words on that meme. So here, it's the idol. It doesn't have to be a woman, okay? This is just the meme, so don't pick on me for that one. The idol has captured the mind and heart, and there's a turning from God. That's what an idol of the heart is. I've put two definitions up here now. I've pinched these from two of my favourite authors, Piper and Keller. I wanted you to understand what an idol of the heart really is. So if I just read the first part through, it starts in the heart, idol of the heart, craving, wanting, enjoying, being satisfied with anything that you treasure more than God. Loving more than God what ought to be loved less than God. He's pretty good, John Piper. I like that one. Listened to about 5 messages on it. They're all really good. Now, Keller, he's written a book, Counterfeit Gods, which I recommend. It's very good. Anything that absorbs your heart and imagination more than God. Substituting some created thing for God in your heart. Replacing the ultimate thing with a good thing. So, idolatry is our heart craving something other than God. And the idol is the thing that we're craving. I found that helpful. So idolatry, again, is the heart craving something other than God, and the idol is the thing that we're craving. So let's get down to tin tacks. Let's have a look at some examples of idols, just in case you're still in that 95% thinking it doesn't apply to you. Okay. Right, I will pick on me. And oh, look, it's cycling again. How did that happen? Oh, over here is a thing called Strava. Runners use it, swimmers use it, cyclists use it. Now, I can tell you my stats for last year, okay? It was a measly year, 5,897 kilometres. I rode. I climbed 59,700 and something metres of climbing, okay? Nearly 60 kilometres of climbing. I know how many hours I rode, okay? I know everything about my cycling. And you can see, look, I know where I've ridden, how my heart was going when I did it. But, do I know how many hours I spent in prayer? Do I know how many Bible verses I memorised? Actually, I probably know the second one, Paul, sorry. Number of life groups attended, number of people, disciple, converts. You know, those would be good stats to know. But one of the things, so park that for a minute, one of the things that I noticed with my cycling was I get up early in the morning, right? We go do our ride. That's actually when it's a good time for me to be with God. So I had to realign, had to recalibrate and so I wasn't getting enough quiet time, enough God, enough prayer. The cycling wasn't bad, but it was taking the place of me doing it. So I still cycle. That's a no-brainer. But I've added time late. I've intentionally made time for the prayer, for the Bible reading, so that I was missing out on. Okay, so I'm going to put up some examples. You might like to take a photo of this and the next slide, actually, just to have a look at later. You might like to think, what is not on that list that should be? Because that's not all-encompassing, the list that I've put up there. What I want, while you're looking at the list and going, oh yeah, that one's me, an idol isn't necessarily a bad thing. We sometimes think that, but it's not. An idol can be a good thing. Remember in our last slide, previous slide, we said, when a good thing becomes an ultimate thing. So a mum who loves her family, right? Loves her kids. If that kid love is an all-consuming love, a dependent love, you know, the suffocating love, and some parents are like that, when those children grow up, they can rebel against that suffocating love. And then the mum or the dad or both who are doing that are left lonely and don't have the thing that they wanted to love. Family love is a good thing, but if it becomes an ultimate thing, it's an idol. My litmus test for idols is how hard are you hang for something? How hard are you hanging on to it? Money. Let's pick money. It's always a topical one. Yeah, in the stock market crash, there sadly were many people often men, who jumped off balconies in Wall Street and high-rises and took their lives because money, Gordon Gekko, greed is good, money was their ultimate. They couldn't picture life, and in our next slide, I'll give you an idea. Number 4, if you lost or failed at it, would it cause you to feel that life is not as good? I'll come back to this one, it'll be back. Or not worth living. So it's becoming an ultimate. So how hard are you holding it, or how lightly are you holding it? I want to give you an example very quickly. Work. Often for some of us, perfectionists, work can become our idol. Workaholics, that's it. There is nothing else really. My identity is in my work. Okay, can people identify that? They know people like that. That's never been an issue for me. Okay, it is something that I haven't held tightly. Work is something that I can honestly say I have held lightly. God asked me in the early stages of my work, I hadn't been an engineer for very long, to give up a year and train in youth ministry in this YMIS course. Really, God? And I'm thinking, okay, that's it. I'm going to be entering ministry full time, that sort of stuff. So I said, dutifully, God, yes. And I went and asked my boss, could I have a year off? Because that was a thing in Telstra, leave without pay. I've got to do this course. God's asked me to do it. No. Hang on. The plan's not working. So this was the regional manager of Telstra Fleet. I asked him, he said no. I thought, what do I do, God? Prayed about it. And he said, appeal. Really? I've got to appeal my boss? How good's this going to be? And I'm thinking, well, I'm probably going to go into youth ministry. I'll become a youth minister at the end of the year. Doesn't matter. So I appealed. I got the year's leave without pay. Off I went and did it. At the end, I applied for some youth ministry jobs. Nothing. Didn't sense that was what God wanted. So back to Telstra. I go to the boss that I've appealed and had his decision overturned, and you reckon that went well? He left long after that, and I got his job. I didn't hold I didn't hold work tightly. I held it lightly. The times I haven't gone that well for me, and even when I retired or had a crack at retirement and gave up work, there was a part of me that hadn't finished some things that I wanted to do. And anyway, God started a consultancy job for me, which I'm going to stop soon, I hope, and I've got to do those things. I gave it up. I stopped. And then suddenly it's back. So if you hold it lightly, if you can let it go, money, Hebrews 10:23 says, hold on tightly to the hope of God. That's the thing to hold on tightly to, not the idol. Okay, I promise to go on to the next one. To identify your idol in those topics, what do you worry about? For people who like alcohol, maybe to cope, there's too much of that. Maybe that's becoming an idol. What do you spend your time and your money on? That will give you a good pointer as to what is important to you. And as I said, there were the Wall Street tycoons who their money was so important that they chose to jump off a building rather than face life without their wealth. Okay, I've got to move on. I hope anyone got a photo of those that you need to. Let's have a look, as we move on, a masterclass Paul gives us in Romans 1 about idolatry. So we've talked about the example of an idol from the Old Testament. We've talked about what are idols for us, idols of the heart, and we've looked at some examples of what they are. Now let's talk about what to do about them. First off, why we're enticed by them, and then secondly, what are we going to do? And that'll draw us through to the end. So in the process of idolatry, there's two words that I'd like you to see, well, it's actually one word twice in these verses. See in the orange bold in verse 23, claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal men. They exchanged. We go to the next section. God gave them up, and then in 25, because they exchanged the truth of God for a lie. So this is our third point. We've had the box, we've had the small g God, we've got the trade. The old swap, the trade, the exchange, the switcheroo, call it whatever you like. Idols, we take a stick figure drawing. We accept a stick figure drawing when we could have a Rembrandt. Seriously. If we're not choosing the ultimate and we choose what we think is the good, we're taking a diamond. Seriously. We're giving up a diamond for dirt. That is what we're doing. Sounds pretty silly? Almost like giving up a baby poo-coloured small V-dub Beetle for a red Ferrari. Have to be red. You would be foolish to do that. God says they became futile in their thinking. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. I read in Jeremiah something that amazed me. Jeremiah 2. Write that one down because you should read that chapter. I could not stop reading it. The fact that we do this exchange, okay, that we exchange the ultimate for simply the good, God for an idol, it says in Jeremiah 2, see if you are as amazed at me when you hear these words. God says, they're giving up me and worshipping idols. Has anyone ever heard of anything as strange as this? Has any nation ever traded its gods for new ones, even though they're not gods at all? Yet my people have exchanged their glorious God for worthless idols. The heavens are shocked at such a thing and shrink back in horror and dismay. Do you hear that? That seriously tells me how unimpressed God is with us when we worship our heart idols, when we give up Him. The heavens are shocked at such a thing and shrink back in horror and dismay. Amazing. So that tells me that it's serious. Okay, God takes this serious. Remember, He's a jealous God. Right back. He is jealous for you to worship Him. He doesn't want to share Himself with others. But He's jealous because He wants the best for you. And God knows if you choose only the good and not the ultimate, if you choose a heart idol, that's not the best course of action for you. That's why He's a jealous God. Okay. We're talking about the last point, the exchange, the swap, the switcheroo, when we change God for something else. Okay, before we do, time check. Just see if you're still one of the ones thinking this doesn't apply to you. Okay? Because I think based on what we've seen, it applies to all of us because Romans 3 says all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Root cause of, we see idolism, heart idols, is really a root cause of our sinning. Anyway, so at this trade that we're doing, this swap, back in Jeremiah 2, I told you, great chapter, this example summarized it for me so well. God says, my people have done two things. They've abandoned me, the fountain of living water, Holy Spirit, never ending, fresh, new life all the time, and have dug themselves cracked cisterns that hold no water at all. No wonder in Romans it says we're foolish. Why would we do it? But we do it. Why would we do it? Oh, I don't know. So, a dirty, cracked, underground cistern. Where are fountains? Are fountains underground? No. A fountain up on the top, fresh water, life-giving, flowing up. We have that, but we choose that. No. Okay, so we don't want to do that. How are we going for time? A few more minutes? Back in Romans 1:23, I just want to hammer home this idea of us choosing a swap, something else, for God. It says, The literal translation of Romans 1:23, it says, they exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for the likeness of an image of corruptible man. So, man's made in the image of God, isn't he? We had Genesis quoted before from Andrew. So man isn't God. That's right. Good. Thanks, Paul. That's why he's our pastor. He's on it. So man is made in the image of God. Man isn't God. He's an image of God. So when we do idolatry of the heart, we exchange God for the likeness of the image of man, which is the image of God. You know what happens in the old days when you had a photocopy and it was a really good joke, you didn't have the internet then, you didn't have Facebook, you'd photocopy it and someone else would photocopy it and someone else would photocopy it, and by the time it was done about 20 times, you could barely see what it was. Or photos or things on Facebook, when they're reproduced, the copy of the copy of the copy is nothing like the original. We exchange God for a copy of a copy of a copy. We don't want to do that. That's our folly. We want to do, and here's where we're going to wrap up, we want to do good exchanges. So the idol of the heart is our negative. We now want to turn to a positive. In your head, I want you to have an example of a good exchange. Okay? So I chose Alaska. As you do. So Alaska in 1867 was owned by the Russians. And a guy called William Seward, on behalf of the American government, negotiated, it's a lot longer story, but I've run out of time, negotiated with the Russians to buy Alaska. Because they'd looked at Alaska, the Russians, and go, nah, it's ice. The fur trade's not going so well. Let's sell it. They were going to, no, I'm not going to sell it to England. Okay, America, they'll do. $7.2 million. It wasn't cheap in 1867. That's $150 million in today's terms. And they said that was Seward's folly. Everybody said he was lambasted, he was criticised. Why would you spend, why would you trade, why would you exchange $7 million for ice? What a brilliant exchange. Who's been proved to be right? He was. Billions of dollars of oil, gold, and everything out of that. Now, the original people of that land have been totally bypassed in this, and that is a tragedy. That is wrong, okay? But I really can't get into that now. Looking at what has happened, they should have been recompensed for that. America got all of that wealth and Russia off their doorstep. How good an exchange is that? That's a very good example of do not exchange your God for anything, exchange everything for him. Paul talked last week in Romans 12 about being living sacrifices. Great segue into today's message, because the positive exchange, the positive trade that God wants from us is our lives. The sacrifice, we talked about idols, the sacrifice that they were doing to Dagon right back at the start. The sacrifice we do is our lives for God. That's the positive exchange. That is buying Alaska for $7 million. Us getting God for the simple price of believing in him and surrendering our lives. You reckon that's a great deal? Okay, let's skip out of that. We're skipping out of that. I said at the end, right back in Ezekiel, how good it was that God saw that they'd worshipped idols. He saw that that's sin and he had to judge it. In our lives, that judgment is Christ. Christ takes the penalty for that judgment. The blood on the mercy seat, if we think of the Ark of the Covenant, is Jesus' blood. We can liaise straight with God through what Jesus did for us. And God wants to capture our minds. In our minds, we turn to God. He wants to capture our hearts. Because if you decide to topple an idol in your life with your mind, okay, I'm not going to ride my bike and it's being a god anymore, whatever, it's not long before you'll be back worshipping that God. That's in 1 Thessalonians, the wording is very particular. They turn to God from idols. Your mind can do the turning around. Your heart moves you to God. It has to be the heart. And I finish now with, do you remember first girlfriend, first grandchild, your wife, when you were wooing her? Pick whatever example that you like. You were in love, right? You were besotted. We're thinking our heart, right? There, I think about Sue 44 years ago. She's in Sunday school, so I could use this example and not get in trouble, and I can show you this photo. 44 years ago, my heart got captured by, it wasn't Jesus, actually Jesus got me just before. My heart was captured by Sue. I loved her so much, I took up figure skating with her. You reckon I like figure skating? No. Well, don't tell her that. So I wrote poems. I did all of these things. Why? She captured my heart. You want to defeat idols? Heart idols? They're not called idols of the heart for nothing. God has to capture your heart again. If you aren't head over heels besotted with God, He's not your ultimate. And if I sound in any way fanatical, extreme, I hope so. Because that's what I see in the New Testament. It is our heart captured, given totally to God. Are you so prepared and in love with God that you go figure skating with Him?